April 4th, 1940. 2 p.m., Merkers, Germany. The air is thick with the smell of wet earth and diesel exhaust. You are standing at the mouth of a dark, yawning shaft in the Kaiserode salt mine, 2,000 feet below the surface of the Thuringian countryside. Imagine the absolute silence of the earth, suddenly shattered by the rhythmic clanking of American combat boots. Above ground, the Third Reich is collapsing in a firestorm of steel and lead. But down here, in the cold, salt-encrusted tunnels, the soldiers of the U.S. Third Army are about to stumble upon a secret so massive it will change the economic history of the modern world. Welcome back to the World War II True Records channel. In this video, we are diving into one of the most incredible, high-stakes discoveries of the entire war, the moment George S. Patton's men uncovered the hidden heart of the Nazi economy. Before we descend into the dark, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It helps us keep these historical legacies alive, and stick around until the end, then tell us in the comments. If you were in Patton's boots, what would your first reaction have been? The discovery didn't start with a map or a spy. It started with a chance encounter. 2 American MPs, PFC Clyde Dixon and PFC James R. Bohr, were patrolling the road near Merkers when they spotted 2 women, civilians, refugees from the chaos. When questioned, the women mentioned something odd, something they had seen the Germans moving into the mine under the cover of darkness for weeks. At first, the Americans thought it was just stolen art, maybe some looted statues or paintings from the Louvre. But as the 90th Infantry Division moved in to secure the facility, they found a massive steel vault door, reinforced and cold to the touch. It wasn't just a storage room, it was a tomb for the wealth of a dying empire. When the engineers finally blew the lock and the heavy door creaked open, the beams of their flashlights cut through the dust, reflecting off something that made their breath hitch. It wasn't wood, it wasn't stone, it was a wall of gold, neatly stacked, shimmering bars of bullion, thousands of bags of high-value currency, and crates overflowing with the personal belongings of those the Nazis had systematically plundered. As the word traveled up the chain of command, it finally reached the man who had pushed his Third Army across Europe with a ferocity that bordered on madness, General George S. Patton. When he received the report, he didn't celebrate, he didn't think about the wealth. He looked at his map and realized this discovery was a logistical nightmare that was slowing down his push toward the heart of Germany. Patton wasn't impressed by the gold, he was annoyed by it. To him, every hour spent guarding this salt mine was an hour his tanks weren't moving, but as he prepared to descend into the mine himself to see the Kaiser's hoard, he had no idea that what lay in those tunnels was far more sinister than just bars of gold. The elevator ride down is a slow, bone-rattling descent. The cable groans under the weight of the men as they drop 2,100 feet into the absolute blackness of the German earth. When the cage finally stops and the gate trembles open, the air hits you. It's dry, salty, and strangely stale. The walls are encrusted with white crystals that sparkle like diamonds in the harsh glare of the GI's portable lamps. General Patton steps out of the elevator, his ivory-handled revolvers catching the light. Beside him are Generals Eisenhower and Bradley. They walk in silence through a tunnel wide enough to drive a truck through, their boots crunching on the salt floor like fresh snow. They reach the main chamber, room number 8. It is a cavernous hall 75 feet wide and 150 feet long. There, under the flickering electric lights rigged up by the engineers, lies the billion-dollar room. The scene is staggering. 7,000 bags of gold bullion, stacked like sacks of grain. 55 boxes of gold bars, hundreds of bags of silver and platinum. But as Patton and Eisenhower move deeper into the room, the awe begins to curdle into a cold, visceral disgust. Stacked against the salt walls are crates that don't contain bullion. They contain suitcases, thousands of them. When an American sergeant pries one open, it's not gold bars that tumble out. It is silver spoons, antique watches, and wedding rings. Thousands of thin gold wedding bands, stripped from the fingers of millions of people sent to the camps. Then they find the most harrowing sight of all, bags filled with gold teeth and fillings. You can almost feel the temperature in the room drop as the realization hits the American commanders. This isn't just a bank vault, it's a crime scene. This isn't the wealth of a nation, it's the harvested remains of an entire continent. Eisenhower turns to Patton, his face pale and grim. The Supreme Commander is silent, his jaw set in a hard line. Patton, usually the most talkative man in the room, is uncharacteristically quiet. He looks at the bags of gold teeth, then back toward the tunnel leading to the surface. To the bureaucrats in Washington, this was the wealth needed to rebuild the world. To the soldiers in the room, it was the physical proof of why they were fighting. But for Patton, the discovery had a different, more urgent meaning. He knew the war wasn't won yet. The Huns, as he called them, were still fighting in the east and south. This gold was the fuel for their war machine, and as long as it sat in this mine, it was a target for a desperate German counterattack. "Brad," Patton says, turning to General Bradley, his voice rasping in the dry mine air, "I want this stuff out of here. If the Germans find out we've got their lunch money, they'll fight like cornered rats to get it back." Patton's mind is already racing ahead. He doesn't see dollars, he sees a logistical bottleneck. To move this much wealth, over 250 tons of gold alone, would require a massive convoy, hundreds of guards, and an airtight security plan. And every soldier used to guard a salt mine was a soldier not currently hunting, the remnants of the Wehrmacht. He was right to be paranoid. Deep in the Bavarian mountains, the SS was already hearing rumors of the mine's capture. And Patton knew that if he didn't move fast, the greatest treasure haul in history would become a bloody trap for his Third Army. April 14, 1945, 11 p.m., Merkers Surface Works. The night air is freezing, but the Merkers mine is a hive of frantic, sweating activity. You can hear the low, guttural growl of hundreds of 10-ton trucks idling in the mud, their exhaust plumes rising like ghosts into the moonlight. This is Operation Gold Rush. Patton has ordered the unthinkable. Move the entire wealth of the Third Reich, 250 tons of gold, billions in currency, and thousands of stolen masterpieces across 100 miles of contested hostile territory to the Reichsbank in Frankfurt. The GIs of the 475th Quartermaster Truck Regiment are tossing gold bars like they are common bricks. There is no reverence here, only the desperate need for speed. A single gold bar weighs about 27 pounds. By the 10th one, a soldier's back is screaming. By the 100th, the wealth of nations feels like nothing more than a heavy, cursed burden. They are loading 32 heavy trucks to the breaking point, their suspensions groaning and sagging under the sheer density of the cargo. Patton stands by his command jeep, his eyes fixed on his watch. To anyone else, this is a treasure caravan. To him, it is a 10-mile-long target. "Every minute we sit here," he growls to an aide, "is a minute some SS officer has to plan an ambush." The convoy is a rolling fortress. At the front, M8 Greyhound armored cars and Sherman tanks lead the way. In the middle, the gold trucks are sandwiched between columns of battle-hardened infantry from the 90th Division. Overhead, P-51 Mustangs have been ordered to provide a constant umbrella of protection, though in the dark of night, the pilots are flying on little more than instinct and prayer. The order is given. The lead tank lurched forward, its treads clattering on the paved road. The convoy begins to snake its way through the jagged ruins of German villages, and the deep, black forests of Thuringia. Imagine being one of those drivers. You are sitting on enough wealth to buy a medium-sized country, yet your only concern is the radiator of the truck in front of you and the possibility of a Panzerfaust whistling out of the dark woods. The roads are choked with the debris of war, burned-out tiger tanks, dead horses, and the silent, hollow-eyed stares of German civilians watching their empire's lifeblood being driven away in the back of American trucks. Halfway to Frankfurt, the lead scout vehicle screeches to a halt. A bridge up ahead has been partially demolished. The convoy stops, the engines idling, the sound echoing off the hills like a dinner bell for any werewolf partisan units hiding in the trees. Patton is at the front of the line in seconds. He doesn't wait for a report. He strides toward the engineers, his voice cutting through the tension. I don't care if you have to fill that gap with your bare hands. Move these trucks. But as the engineers scramble to lay down steel plating, a distant sound begins to grow. It's not an American engine. It's the high-pitched whine of a German aircraft, a lone Junkers flying low and fast, searching for the very prize Patton is trying to hide. If a single bomb hits one of those trucks, the explosion won't just be fire. It will be a rain of molten gold that seals the road forever. The whine of the Junkers engine grows into a deafening roar as the aircraft sweeps over the trees. Every soldier in the convoy freezes, fingers tightening on triggers, eyes squinting into the black sky. But the pilot, blinded by the darkness and the lack of a clear silhouette, banks hard to the west, his shadow passing over the gold trucks like a fleeting ghost. The threat vanishes into the night, but the message is clear. The Third Army is no longer invisible. The engineers work with a desperate, manic energy. They hammer steel plates into place, the ring of metal on metal echoing through the forest. As soon as the makeshift bridge is secure, the lead Sherman lurches forward, the metal groaning under its weight. One by one, the trucks follow, their tires spinning in the mud before finding purchase on the cold steel. Patton watches every single vehicle pass, his face a mask of iron determination. He doesn't breathe a sigh of relief until the last tail light disappears around the bend. April 15th, 1945, 7 a.m., Frankfurt, Germany. As the sun begins to bleed over the jagged skyline of Frankfurt, the convoy rumbles into the courtyard of the Reichsbank. The city is a skeletal ruin, but the bank's massive vaults are still intact, deep underground. Waiting for them is a team of American financial experts, their clipboards and pens ready to catalogue the loot. The back of the first truck is thrown open, a bag of gold bars is tossed onto a counting table. Then another, and another. The experts are wide-eyed, scribbling numbers that don't seem real. "Sir," one officer says to Patton, "we've counted over $200 million, and that's just the first 3 trucks." Patton doesn't even look at the gold. He is standing by a window looking toward the east, toward the sound of distant artillery fire. He lights a cigar, the smoke curling around his polished helmet. "I don't give a damn about the count," Patton rasps. "I want the receipts signed, the guards posted, and my tanks refueled. The Germans are still out there, and they aren't going to surrender because we found their treasury. They're going to surrender because we've broken their backs." To Patton, the Merkers. Mine was never about the money. It was about the destruction of the Nazi capacity to resist. He knew that by seizing this gold, he had cut the nerves of the Reich. They could no longer pay for their secret weapons. They could no longer buy the loyalty of neutral nations, and they could no longer fund the werewolf units he so despised. But as the days passed and the full scale of the loot was revealed, the thousands of stolen paintings by Rembrandt and Goya, the crates of precious jewels, and the harrowing containers of gold teeth, the world began to realize what Patton had actually uncovered. It wasn't just a hoard, it was the ledger of a civilization's descent into madness. Patton would eventually leave Frankfurt to continue his drive into Czechoslovakia, pushed by an impossible energy to finish the war on his terms. He would leave the bureaucrats and the lawyers to argue over who the gold belonged to. For him, the gold was just a heavy distraction. The real prize was the total, unconditional surrender of the enemy. As the gold was locked away in the Frankfurt vaults, protected by American bayonets, the story of the Merkers salt mine became a legend, the moment the arsenal of democracy literally captured the heart of the enemy. It was the ultimate reversal of fortune. The wealth that was supposed to fund a 1,000-year Reich was now paying for its total reconstruction under American terms. The war would end just weeks later. The gold would be used to help stabilize the post-war European economy, returning what could be returned and funding the massive effort to rebuild a broken continent. But for the men of the Third Army, the memory of that cold, salty air and the shimmer of 1,000 gold bars would remain the most surreal moment of their lives, a glimpse into the dark, wealthy heart of the monster they had finally slain.